Team players, welcome back. Today we're going to be covering two main things. First, obviously a live draft. We're doing an Underdog best ball draft today. Pre-NFL draft, pre-NFL everything, man. They haven't even done free agency yet. But the big topic we're going to be talking about throughout the draft, of course, in addition to the players, is going to be the notion of diversification and whether or not you should care about it or not. All that coming up right now. So, Bob, I do want to start with something that you see presented pretty dominantly, which is this notion of you need to diversify your picks. You need to make sure that you don't go above X percentage, and you have a good diversification, because what happens if you're wrong? And that's essentially what the notion of diversification is in terms of your exposure rates. And I have a very different mindset about exposure than most. Mine is, if you know what you're doing and you're doing it right, you don't need to be a Ponzi scheme and pick every player in the league so you're guaranteed to have 10% make the finals. Just pick your teams correctly, be good about it, and win a lot.
I mean,
so that's where I'm at. Now, that doesn't mean that you're going to have the same team every time. Obviously, every draft is unique and different and all that. But I'm not going out of my way just because I've always taken Chase with the first pick overall that, oh, now I need to force in a Saquon lineup.
So I will kick back at you on this a little bit. And it goes back to a conversation we've had many times. And more so the facts for the audience right now is that diversification and exposure rates are just one of the aspects to take a look at when you are drafting. It is not the be-all, end-all of the aspect, but it is something that you want to be aware of when you're drafting. It's not something that should necessarily guide every pick you make, but there are some instances in time where it can be useful. As it goes to diversification anyway, you can really talk about examples from things outside of fantasy football, such as the stock market, or just necessarily something even sillier than that, just what you eat in a given day, right? So thinking about the things that you eat, I'm going to give this example because your brother always does this all the time. You don't want to eat too much cheese.
Oh, I don't know about that. Cheese is beautiful.
If you eat too much cheese, it's going to cause some distress a little bit later.
That's
but
true.
There are some benefits to eating a lot of cheese. If you go all in, there are benefits to certain things. But I think the one primary point, Joe, that I want to bring up as it goes to a thing like diversification is that you can't play fantasy football thinking that you're going to be wrong. You have to go into every draft that you're in knowing or thinking that the data that you've collected is the best set of data that you have, and you are taking the best possible players in regards to that situation. Of course, if you're doing a lot of these best ball drafts, the thing is that if you're filling out 150 lineups, you don't want to have all of the same players in all 150 lineups. And that is something that I think is this Bijan. This is Jefferson, right?
Yeah, it has to be Jefferson.
Okay. So you want to go into a draft and you want to think to yourself, okay, I have a set number of players that I'm out on, that I don't want to be in on.
Yes, and that part's very important.
You are going to drop your exposure to those guys to around zero or close to zero or zero totally. Then there's a group of players, and this is where the exposure and the idea of that, I think, plays a role. The Jacoby Myerses of the world, where it's not necessarily a bad player, but it's not necessarily a player that you're going to over rely on. A good example of this that we gave last year, because it's the same receiver for the same kind of market, is a Ladd McConkey style. That Ladd, we were overdrafting a guy like Ladd because we felt that his potential was going to be through the roof. So if you're overdrafting, but then also there were a lot of drafters out there that thought similar to Jalen Polk. So if you overdrafted Jalen Polk, and underdrafted Ladd McConkey, you were probably not in a good situation come playoff time. Now,
oh yeah, you didn't make the playoffs.
Now the thing is, though, when you are right on your overexposed players, you are right to a very high degree, and not many other people might have that same player. When you're wrong, you're immediately taking yourself out of the money. So
this goes back to the broader point. You're 100% right on everything you just said. The to me is trying to diversify and basically hide your spots so that you just blanket the whole thing doesn't show that you know anything. I get why people do it.
But no, this is
because the reality is your stockbroker doesn't know. He's not paid to do it. He's paid to collect more of your money. That's what they do.
But this is
in our case, we know what we're talking about. Like, there are some definite don't hits that we're not going after at all.
This next one will be JT, right?
Absolutely, it's got to be JT.
Okay.
Assuming he's on the board.
I want to bring up a point because people will ask.
It's not going to be JT.
Okay, so not JT.
I'll be leaning Bucky or Ladd because I don't think Bucky will get to us in the fourth or the third. What about
T?
Well, after T signed his tenure, I'm less into T staying in Cincinnati.
Okay.
I think I want to take Bucky or Ladd. Which one do you want?
I'll go Bucky. Okay, so but as I was saying, there is some important characteristics here of diversification that need to be brought up. And this goes to, more so those middle round players that have already been in the league for a long time. With rookies, you're banking on potential and situation. So it's okay.
Well, actually, it's kind of just middle rounds in general because the draft forces your first 4 rounds or so. It's if you want to be overexposed on someone, it's the later guys you can keep getting over and over and over
again.
So
where we're looking at here is kind of in the market of like Jerry Jeudy, Jacoby Myers, Deebo Samuel, players like that, where you have to ask yourself, is there a player that
Big Brian is the first tight end? What?
Is there a player that I could invest in that will return some dividends if I take him? And does it match well with my team, right? Hold on, who are we taking here? Is Garrett Wilson still there?
Garrett Wilson is still there. It's basically to me Garrett Wilson, JMO, or Cook. But I'll go Garrett Wilson. You push for him every time.
Yeah, because a lot of those running backs already came off the board that I was looking at.
Oh, yeah, Cook would be the only running back left, but I'm all good doing the running back roulette on the rookies. So, yeah, Bob, I mean, it gets to the point of this is that at Local Football Flavor, we do go all in on people. We do acknowledge who we're very much
we've
against.
Gotten burned by,
and Garrett Wilson was that guy last year. And we were right. He heated up at the end. But I do think that under the new regime, with Adams out of the picture altogether, Garrett Wilson is basically in his spot to shine. He's also he's getting his 5th-year option or not. So it's kind of a contract year for him.
And this is the other thing, too, about like diversification is that it really, you don't want, if you're entering 150 and you're diversifying your portfolio to say, you have 30%, 40%, 20%, 10%, 15%. If you hit all your teams, and you're going to have a good amount of teams in the finals, and you're going to have a good chance to make money.
But that's only because you spread the field. If you would go in 50% on 6 players and you hit on all of them like you should, you clean up.
Again, when we talk about exposures and we talk about that, it's more of from a risk analysis standpoint, is that there is, usually speaking, there is a couple players that everybody is out on for very specific reasons. But if they were to pop off and hit, well, then you would have wanted to be in on them. Hey, family, what's going on, man? You out of the hospital, family? You said you were in last week. How'd everything go? When you look at a guy like Saquon Barkley, for example, and guys like Josh Jacobs last year, people were fading Barkley and Jacobs because of the role that they thought Barkley would have versus Jacobs' age and ability in a new system, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you faded those guys 100%, you obviously weren't probably going to make it past a certain number of rounds in the playoffs of best ball formats. You needed to have Saquon Barkley a lot of the times to do that. But there's also a difference here in that there's a way to make up points. You can gather points from different players. So, for example, if I'm 100% out on Devontae Adams, but I am 70% in on Garrett Wilson, and Garrett Wilson ends up having the same kind of effort that season, well, then I'm not losing much. But when you have a Herculean-like effort, like Saquon Barkley had this past year, being out.
Oh, this pick is going to be J-Mo or Zay.
Is an issue. J-Mo?
J-Mo or Zay?
I don't want Zay. Do not put Zay on this team.
See, you're way further down on Zay than I am.
I am.
See, I don't get why. Baltimore 100% is going to be going offensive line and defense in their major acquisitions. They're lining the thing up for Zay.
I hear you.
He's so much better than Bateman, and there's talk they might even trade Andrews.
You know, I hear what you're saying, and I can say that
I'd rather have the 1 on the team than the 3.
That's fine. I mean, if you want to take Zay because I overrode you on Garrett Wilson. So feel free to take Zay here, but there's many reasons why Zay is a little bit more of a player that I think is not necessarily what I want in best ball. One reason is the touchdown production. In terms of his touchdown market, he's not the guy.
No, it's definitely a running team.
The guy is Lamar. The guy is Derrick Henry. So immediately, you've put our 4th round player on a cap. He's on a touchdown. Like, there might be circumstances where he could produce touchdowns in a stronger state multiple times. But the other fact of the matter remains is that the way he was used this year did not lend itself to consistent plus like 16-point production.
No, he wasn't. He was in September and October. When he got hurt in November, he never really popped out.
But again, what you're looking for is over the course of the whole year. And even when he came back from the injury, we weren't getting that production that we saw because it was recognized that they didn't need to use him in that same capacity. So,
and that's about Zay. So Omar Hampton's the dude I'm going with here. He's going to be a 1st-round running back in April. And, first-round running backs get the ball.
I want to touch on that, Ant, in a moment. So, Ant, exactly. When if you fade a player like 1,000%, your data has to suggest that this player does not have any capacity to reach X value, right? So a guy that I'm fading 1,000% is Ramondre Stevenson. And I don't see a scenario where a guy like Ramondre Stevenson, who has only produced 1,000 yards once in his career, behind a team that looks as though it is more dedicated to passing the ball, especially in the red zone, who also has fumble issues, should even be considered to be drafted. And anybody that calls a guy like Ramondre a steal, it seems to suggest that there's no other better option there, which is a reasonable case, because when you're looking at running backs in that same market, you've got DeAndre, which again, there's not a compelling case to push DeAndre Swift up your board any, and Brian Robinson Jr., who may or may not continue a full-time role next year. So those 3 running backs right there, for me, encompass a very good dead zone, but also I'm not willing to throw my hat into any one of those. And I would more so rather just take, a wide receiver that could potentially have upside, given a guy like Keon Coleman, for example, where, of course, Keon Coleman's year this year was absolutely putrid. He ended up with a wrist injury, ended up hurt. but at least
but here, can I pause on Coleman real quick?
Hold on.
And talk about the.
Let me finish this thought for a minute.
Yeah.
But at least I know that the Buffalo Bills are dedicated to Josh Allen. And knowing that they're dedicated to Josh Allen means that I am willing to take a chance on a wide receiver who is a touchdown threat, as opposed to a guy like Shakir a couple rounds earlier, who has proven to not be as much of a touchdown threat, at least in the red zone capacity. So there's a lot of conversation to have about player personnel and the reasons why certain players are fades. But Ramondre Stevenson's one of those guys that, there is absolutely no reason to be excited about what his potential could be this year. And I think he can get replaced by a rookie, in all honesty.
Yeah. No, there's a lot of running backs going to be replaced by rookies. We just saw Connor go off. So you look at Travion Henderson and James Conner. Those two prospects, well, obviously Connor's not a prospect anymore, but those two guys couldn't be more different. Henderson could be a home run hitter, breaking the world off, and probably weighs more than Connor.
Why are you comparing them to James
one injury
Conner?
from being out of football?
Oh, you're comparing because they're side by side. Okay.
Yeah, they just went back to back. But what I wanted to get back to was,
who we taking here, Joe? Who we taking?
I'm taking Chris Godwin.
Okay, I like that.
I was going to take Caleb Johnson because I didn't think that Godwin was going to follow us, but Godwin been on my board for a while. I might even take Baker with him. But to the point here of late first round running back or receivers and beyond, a lot of them have similar stories.
I'll get to that family in a moment.
To Coleman. Like, if you look at it, Worthy didn't really show up until the end. Coleman never really showed up at all. Ladd is the only exception of the late round guys who did anything. Because even like Gett, who we keep taking late, he had it forced to him, but he didn't really tear the ball off the cover. No, unless you're a receiver inside the top 15, fantasy-wise, it's a crapshoot. The running backs, on the other hand, completely different story. You have all the way up to the fourth round. And I bring that up because there's a lot of guys that are in this group. Like Burton is the top receiver right now. Ekabuke is who just was one of the guys right there. And to me, I'm going to – and by the way, Jalen McMillan's my pick right here. Jalen McMillan, to me, is alone as a great value, but as a handcuff to Godwin, I think it's a
Pearsall, too, is a good pick.
What's that one?
Pearsall's a good pick, too, I think.
Well, Pearsall's another example of a guy. Would you rather Pearsall or Godwin?
Flip a coin. Your choice.
Pearsall's fine. Pearsall's a starter. Godwin's a third guy. He's actually the second slot when he's really done correctly. So if Godwin stays, Pearsall's the better pick.
Yeah.
So we'll go with Godwin stays.
And here's a point of diversification that we talked about a little bit earlier. It's not a necessary thing, but when you're thinking about guys that you've already taken and you want to diversify your portfolio just a smidgen and not worry too much about so high exposure ratings or low exposure ratings on certain players, this is kind of a microcosm that we're in. Ricky Pearsall and Jalen McMillan are guys that we like. These are two guys that we believe that, given all circumstances, as what they should be when it comes fantasy time for the actual season to start, these two players are going to be in a position to be 800-plus yard wide receivers, 5+ touchdown wide receivers.
I think that's their floors.
I'm saying they have the potential to exceed those expectations. But because we have them very similar, I'm okay taking either. But because we already had built a Tampa stack, and we potentially have Chris Godwin maybe coming back to Tampa, it doesn't hurt us as much not taking Jalen McMillan, because we also think that based on our statistics that both these guys are going to be productive. So diversification to that end makes sense. If you believe that the situation's all being very good with Ricky Pearsall, with Debo out, Ricky Pearsall has a role. So we know the role is defined. We know he can be productive in that role. It also gives us a chance at two different stacks. It gives us a chance at a Tampa potentially. It gives us a chance at a San Francisco. And because we took J. Jeff, it's going to be hard to take whoever the quarterback is going to be there.
Oh, we're going to take the rookie. We can take McCarthy
Maybe
late.
we go
easy.
after McCarthy a little bit later, but I want to get to a couple points that family made.
Well, but before you get to family here, the one thing was we let the draft do that to us. We didn't force it. Like, we didn't force Godwin or force different exposure for the sake of having it. Son of a bitch.
There he is. Okay, so Baker's gone.
Tyler Warren's the next guy up on my board.
God, family.
And quite frankly, I'm taking him. Dude, I cannot. This goes back to the first point. When you know you have something right, you go into it. And the 8th round for tight ends is a good spot.
This is a guy, obviously, that Joe is going to be overexposed on above the field.
Oh, absolutely. Same with Fields, by the way.
He's okay living and dying on the Tyler Warren bandwagon.
100%. 100%.
Joe, if
he had WR next to his name, he would go in the top.
We're not getting into that. We're not getting into that. But when it goes to the next pick here, I think I would like to grab, if it makes sense, if the ADPs are lining up, either Tank or ETN, or we go with Mims, one of the two.
All right, so
if the ADPs are lining up, I want to get
ETN is basically the top running back on the board because Dobbins is not on our board.
How do you feel vis-a-vis ETN and Bigsby?
Bob, you said something last year. I think quite frankly, I'd rather Najee than both of them. But you said something last year that felt like it rings true. Is that everyone wants to make Bigsby a thing?
Tank a thing, but Tank's never a thing. I remember saying that.
And I was like, that was like the truest thing. I want to take Najee. Because I think Najee will outproduce ETN, and I don't trust Jackson.
I'm going to let you have these two picks. Well,
it's going to be Najee then. Because Najee is the second running back on the board. It's ETN then Najee.
I'm going to let you have Tyler Warren, and I'm going to let you have Najee. I'm going to let you have
you keep acting like Tyler Warren's a mistake.
Guys. What?
You keep acting like Tyler Warren's a mistake. This guy's better than Bowers was.
Let me get to this point here before I once again reiterate my feelings about Warren. Okay.
All right.
But yes, trying to sell Ramondre right now is going to be incredibly difficult because the amount of time that most people have invested in Ramondre Stevenson in terms of a dynasty perspective, etc., you're not going to get similar return on value. I feel like Ray Davis has a potential as an upswing kind of candidate here in terms of what he could do and provide for that offense. More so, I think what's going to end up happening with a guy like Ramondre Stevenson, unfortunately, that if you want to trade Ramondre Stevenson, you're going to have to trade for a running back with less upside, similar to like a Rachaad White. But again, you don't necessarily want Rachaad White. Again, Jerome Ford. You don't necessarily want Jerome Ford. So it comes down to the fact that for most of us, Ramondre Stevenson, if you have him on your team, you can't get rid of him. It's like poison, because if you're going to get rid of him, you're either going to get rid of him for picks, which is okay, or a wide receiver maybe with potential to explode. Maybe you go after, the much loved Dontavian Wicks, but again, you're not going to spike any much greater production in terms of the running back market. Everybody knows or feels they know that Ramondre Stevenson is cooked, so they're not going to want to buy into an asset that feels cooked.
I think everyone knows that. I think that's correct when you said it the first time.
I mean, everybody knows it, and so it's going to be a challenging ask.
So Bob, this pick coming up, because it's the appropriate ADP for him, will be Mims. Assuming, unless he gets reached on, Mims will be the guy in this pick.
And I'm okay too, considering starting to.
I like our receiving room in this draft, Bob.
I'm okay also starting to consider maybe Brock Purdy, as well.
Well, there he goes. I was like, Purdy has been
Okay.
top ADP for about
Yeah.
20 picks.
Yeah, I was curious. I thought about him the last round, but I was like, I'd rather have the positional value
Yeah,
there.
we only have 3 running backs.
Also, you might be able to sell Ramondre Stevenson for a guy like Kyle Pitts, but who in the hell wants Kyle Pitts too? So, I mean, that's the other.
Kyle Pitts at least gives you some upside. All right, Stroud was a guy I wanted. That guy who took him as a reach because he wasn't going to get him back.
All right, take Mims.
Mims will be the selection, yeah.
Take Mims. He showed some promise. They're probably going to bring in a couple other wide receivers to really think about. Troy Franklin's still there. Cortland Sutton's still there. But Mims did enough to, I think, provide some good value. If they get a running game,
I agree with that.
If they get a running game that's fairly consistent, I think Mims will have a good amount of value here.
It will be time to look at quarterback on the comeback. Here's your ADP right now: Herbert, May, Lawrence, Penix, Tua. Given the fact that we don't have any of those rosters represented, I don't know how excited. Baker's the one I wanted. The fact we let Miss Baker.
Yeah, I mean that's okay. There goes Herbert and May.
But where I'm going to go with this is that I would rather have more running standalone quarterbacks since we're not going to have a stack.
So A-Rich?
Unless we do J.J. McCarthy as well.
You want to do A-Rich?
I think I want to do A-Rich and Fields. Okay, and maybe McCarthy as a insurance
speculation. I mean, I get it. People got scared at quarterback. There's a run.
There's 100% a run.
I don't like that, but
I don't like it either. But we're not going to get Richardson back at ADP at 140 with this run.
I think
Richardson. Let's back this up. Everyone beyond us was part of that run. Maybe we could let Richardson roll. And the guy I would want to go to, someone we haven't talked about, is Christian Kirk.
No.
I think in a new situation, he could be great.
No. Do not take Christian Kirk. No.
I think it's Richardson.
Take a rook. If you're going to do anything, take a rook, man.
How do you feel about Trey Harris?
Yeah, take him.
All right, Trey Harris it is. We'll roll the dice on Richardson. Again, and the reason we're doing this is looking at everyone in front of us, with the exception of the number 11 drafter, just took a quarterback. So the hope is they're not going to double it down and we get Richardson on the slide back.
Yeah, I mean, that's the hope. Team 11 probably will take 2 quarterbacks, but knowing that they just had a run at wide receivers there's a good chance that that's going to happen. Again, this is an experiment to see, well, what happens when you wait. Ideally we wanted Baker. He wasn't there. Joe took Tyler Warren. We easily could have positioned ourselves into a different type of quarterback there, but we didn't. And
admittedly, part of this is my overconfidence in Justin Fields and knowing I'm going to get him late.
It's overconfidence. This is, again, about being super exposed to one player.
Actually, I'll look at it. I'm only at like 45% on Fields right now.
But there's a point, though, where I've said this before. Being overexposed on a singular player isn't necessarily going to submarine your whole team, depending on where you get that player.
Yeah, if it's a late pick.
I said it last year to Joe about Ladd, is that I'm okay rolling Ladd as our 4th, 5th wide receiver because I'm fairly confident in everything else. So that's the point to be said about like overexposure and things like that.
Let me just give you our receiver room, Bob, real quick, because I think we might be done at receiver.
I'm actually amazed at the runs that just happened in terms of
this draft is weird like that. But Bob, our receiving room is J. Jeff, Garrett Wilson, Flowers, Godwin, Pearsall, Mims, and Trey Harris, the rookie.
I like that.
I think we're done at receiver.
I like that a lot.
I know it's only 7, but I think we're done at it.
Yeah.
Which receiver are we getting that's starting over J. Jeff, Garrett Wilson, and Godwin?
You never know. But I think we do need A-Rich here if he's available.
I think A-Rich has to be the pick here.
Family, in terms of this point, I absolutely agree with you. This is not the year to want to sell Aaron Jones. This is not the year to want to sell Ramondre Stevenson.
It's not the year to sell any running back. There's so many rookies.
Because there's too many coming out. And it's going, like, if you're trying to sell a guy like Eckler or Rashad White or Jerome Ford, there's just no room. Like, you're going to notice that guys like I'm not seeing his name on the board, but I'm betting Jerome Ford is still. It just went.
Jerome Ford just went 2 picks ago,
round 12. But I got to say, like, if I'm that drafter drafting Jared Goff, CJ Stroud, low ceiling quarterbacks, and then 2 of those running backs there, I'm just not sure about.
You're better off taking Ollie Gordon because he's probably the starter. He's more likely to be the starter in Cleveland than Ford. Like, yeah. I know Jared Ford.
Dowdle
I know Jerome Ford's not starting.
Dowdle is a hard asset to sell.
Dowdle's not starting either.
He was productive enough when he was asked to be productive. But again, they're going to replace him, and he might land on a team or he might stay on the same team. I think that he's one of those players that is going to be tough to sell too, but I'm not fully out on Dowdle.
Bob, this pick is exactly going to be J.J. McCarthy's ADP, and I'm going to take him.
You're taking J.J. McCarthy over Fields?
Oh, no, I'm still taking Fields. I can just get him the round later.
Are you sure about that?
I'm confident in that.
You'd rather take J.J. McCarthy?
I want to have all 3 of them.
Okay. It's bold of you.
Well, I don't think it is that bold. I've looked at what that coach has done with quarterbacks. He has made some really good quarterbacks.
But my question to you is, do you think J.J. McCarthy plays for the Vikings?
Yes, I think he starts the entire year.
That's the question.
I don't think they're bringing back Darnold, dude. I think what they're going to do is I think that they're going to do some equivalent of a cap and trade with Darnold. So they don't lose him for nothing, because I think that's how it's going to go when it's all said and done. I think what you're going to get is they're going to salary cap him, or the franchise tag him rather.
Fair enough.
Trade him for a 4th-round pick, and then he's wherever he goes.
All I'm saying is that, coming off an injury last year, hasn't played it down in the NFL yet.
Still was my number 2 quarterback last year, though.
He was. But again, I'm just I like it because there's the potentiality of the stack there. If it hits, it's nice. If you're building Jefferson, you are almost always building a late JJ McCarthy. So there's really no, if he hits, like I said at the top of the episode, if he hits, you're to the moon, which is beautiful. But I'm not projecting necessarily that he is going to be the guy that's going to come in and it's going to be lights out. I'm just not sure.
Holy fuck, he did go, Bob. You were right.
I told you.
Fields is climbing up that. What says Justin Fields is climbing up boards? We used to get him in the 16th round.
I would much rather have Justin Fields over JJ McCarthy.
I'll keep you up in the future. We're never making that mistake.
I'd much rather have Bryce Young as well. I don't think.
Well, I took McCarthy because we have J-Jeff, and I want to have at least one stack.
The reason I was against McCarthy there is that I don't think that drafter would have drafted McCarthy.
So you don't think? So you think McCarthy would have slipped more than Fields coming up?
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
Right, well, part of this is you got to let the market tell you can't be the only one. This is a point for overexposure. You can't be always the guy taking the same people. You got to see where the market's telling you.
So I'm gonna be honest.
Because like I said, Bob, we're getting Fields in the 15th, 16th round, and now he's going to the beginning of 14. That's good to know.
This quarterback discussion is rough. Time for a tight end. I'm kidding.
No, it's time for a rookie running back who's going to be good.
But here's the point. I have no faith in either of those 2 quarterbacks that we've drafted.
No, I understand that part.
I think that they can put points on the board, but consistency will be a problem. If you wait like we did in this draft, quarterbacks flew off the board very quickly. But I don't
10th round push, yeah.
I don't necessarily see Herbert, May, Ward, or Lawrence, or Penix, being so light years better than the players that we drafted there. But the other point to that end too is I think Trey Harris, if we would have drafted, let's say we would have drafted Michael Penix, and then coming around, we would have got Xavier
See,
Legette.
I don't see any difference between Penix and McCarthy.
Bryce Young. Again, Shador would have been okay there. Joe, who you taking as your third quarterback, or are we not taking a third quarterback this time? You're just rolling the dice on those two guys.
Dude,
you got the sticks, man.
There's no one I want to make this pick with.
Stafford? You want to take Stafford?
Not really. I'd rather go with Donnie Mitchell.
Adonai Mitchell, okay, sure. He was a guy that profiled decently well last year.
Yeah, he was their second round pick, right?
Yeah, never really put it all together though. If you're banking on
now we got 3 Colts.
Here's the problem.
We got 3 Colts. It's gonna be all right.
Yeah, no QB since Fields. Oh well, Shador went. Yeah, that early run definitely took a lot of people. I would say they felt like they were going to lose out. We got a bargain in there in Mims and Harris. When it comes to Richardson, like when you're comparing the quarterbacks above Richardson can peak a high value. He did it just a couple of times, but the problem is the low volume of passing. If they're going to start winning consistently in Indianapolis, they will probably want to move to a more balanced attack. Does that mean A-Rich will be better? No, it doesn't. But it does mean that there's potentiality that he's going to throw the ball more than 12 times a game. Again, J.J. McCarthy, if he is the starting quarterback for the Vikings, then that means that he's going to continue to be the starting quarterback for the Vikings. I know they picked up Daniel Jones last year. I know they're still trying to think about Darnold, but if JJ McCarthy is their guy, they draft him as if he was the guy. Even that, if he's an asset they could trade to get something better, I don't know, but I do know that he will probably be starting somewhere next year. Do I like his potential? Maybe, maybe not. We'll see. Depends on where he lands. If he's on the Vikings and the Vikings end up giving him time to throw the ball to Jefferson, he could be an elite level talent. We'll have the jury's still out on that though. Javonte is he is the leader of the club family. Javonte Williams is the leader of the club of players that you do not want to draft. I would rather.
We didn't draft him last year before he did nothing.
I would rather take a 5th round rookie in this year's NFL draft.
We're going to be drafting one of those in Damian Martinez.
I would rather take a 5th round rookie who may or may not have a starting role next year than waste my time on Javonte Williams. I can give you all of the reasons, and I'm going to give it to you after our pick here of why I think Javonte Williams is just straight up trash. I would like a tight end here, Joe. I know you have your boy Tyler Warren, and again, this draft plays into Joe thinks Tyler Warren.
Oh, I want to take Mason here, dude. No, I can't.
Tyler Warren's going to be elite. We don't need another tight end because Tyler Warren is going to be the boy.
That's right. But we are going to take a second.
So why fade him? Also, you know, the guy that I think I'm not really sure about, but I want to look into a little bit more is if the Jags are having question marks about a guy like Evan Ingram and they have Brenton Strange there, do they go out and do they find themselves another tight end? That's the question mark. Darnold at that pick there, I think is a better pick than JJ McCarthy where we picked them. Just to show some of that value that's still left. And you don't necessarily want to overexert based off of ADP value, like was done there. So, it happens. I think that we're pretty cooked in this in terms of the quarterback room, and we're going to need a lot of help from.
We're going to need a stab rookie, baby.
Well, there's no more rookies left except for Jackson.
Oh, I disagree with that. I have a sleeper that I have been on the bus
quarterbacks.
Yeah,
talking about quarterbacks.
We're talking about quarterbacks.
You think a rookie quarterback? Okay, all right. We'll see what you got. We'll see what you got.
Oh, you're gonna hate it. It's gonna be the last pick overall, Bob. Like the last pick. I know he'll still be on the board, but I think he's gonna. What I think he's gonna be is a second round draft pick in this draft and the third quarterback taken. I think he's gonna jump ahead of Dart.
But also,
and
before I get to Javonte here, I just want to talk about what Joe's done in this draft. Taking Tyler Warren and Gesicki is a total Joe move. I should put that on like a poster. We're talking about exposure today. We're talking about overexposure, underexposure. Why exposure may not be so worrisome for some people as you're drafting, and the ways that you can think about exposure in different capacities. But these are two guys that Joe believes in are going to be extremely successful this year. And when it comes to tight ends, it is the latest he's gotten Gesicki in a while. I am
because of that quarterback push, man.
I am not opposed, especially when it comes to the tight end market, to fly myself into a couple of tight ends and overexpose myself to a couple different tight ends. Because as we've established over the history of fantasy football, the number one tight end is going to be producing, and it's been Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, Antonio Gates, like that, Rob Gronkowski, producing plus 20-point numbers. And you're most likely not going to get that out of a lot of these guys down here, but you are going to get occasional top 10 tight end numbers in a given week. And that means that your tight end is going to spike over 10 points in a given week. Not necessarily spike, but for tight ends, it is. So if I'm going out there and I'm going to overexert myself in a position, I'm not opposed to doing it at a position like tight end, because the pathways to success for a tight end are so much more difficult to be super successful as a tight end as opposed to a wide receiver or running back. So I think that it's okay to be overexposed at tight end. I do wish that Joe would stop overexposing to Tyler Warren. I get his viewpoints on Tyler Warren.
Well, I'm not going to stop. I didn't stop on Ladd last year either.
The reason I want you to stop a little bit is because I want you to look at the other players in the 8th round, because there is value in other players in the 8th round.
All right, let's go to that 8th round. Tyler Warren. Who is here? You're like shaking. You spent 20 minutes hating on Ramondre Stevenson.
I'm not talking about
the pick would have been Baker had he been there.
Yeah.
I don't like Pacheco at all.
I'm not talking about the running backs. Go down.
I'm looking at the round overall. Matthew Golden is.
We'll get to that.
I think the textbook definition of a high promise, not value first year rookie.
We'll get to that. Go down. We'll get to Tyler Warren again.
You're trying to say I'm missing out on stuff, but I don't really think I am.
But as it goes to Javonte has proven himself, at least on the Denver Broncos, that he's not a valuable asset to that team. Javonte Williams basically played himself out of a job.
Played himself out of the league, man.
Pacheco is there as well, but Javonte is there for me more. And I'm going to tell you this why. Against a team like Carolina, where Carolina was one of the worst teams against the run last year, if not the worst team against the run. And you look at it and you say, okay, well, maybe this is the week that I want to play Javonte Williams. And I remember talking about it in DFS as hey, I'm going to have a little bit of exposure in that game against Carolina. The dude went 17 for 44 with 4 receptions for 8 yards. Now, PPR, the receptions are valuable enough. There was one game last year where he got 7 receptions. So there is some slight value to the reception totals, but he doesn't produce. And so I can't continue to throw out a player. And I get, family, why you're saying Pacheco is because Pacheco's not getting receptions, period. So
Pacheco's not a starting running back in the NFL next year, let alone in fantasy.
It's definitely problematic with some of these running backs. And I will say, in my opinion, Javonte Williams has played himself out of a job. I don't think he's going to find another job consistent performance in the league. Last year, 139 carries, 513 yards, 4 touchdowns. He's 42nd out of running backs in terms of yards. And 52 receptions. So he, his reception total was 20 less than a guy like Zay Flowers. So maybe he has a bit more value depending on the team in full PPR, but still he's a hard avoid for me because he's not a guy, even in best ball, that's, outside of what was that one game? He had 2 touchdowns against New Orleans in that putrid game. Other than that, he's non-existent. He's never going to really crack any part of your lineup. So why take him? Yeah. Running backs to fade, you might fade Kyren. And we gave you a couple.
Kyren's fadeable, very much.
We gave you a couple reasons why last week that Kyren is a guy that you could take in the 4th round. His value feels right in the 4th, 5th round.
If he holds his NFL job, which I'm not sure he is.
Yeah, it feels right. But if I own Kyren, because Kyren's production, we talked about this at the beginning of last season as well, because Kyren's production is totally tied to the amount of carries he gets because he's not explosive. And you can say, oh, well, that's for any running back. You just said this about Javonte Williams too. Yes, but for Kyren to be super successful, he's going to need a buttload of carries. Javonte Williams, you give him a buttload of carries, he's still not successful. So if you give Kyren all those carries, he's not really producing a lot of yards. He did get a lot of touchdowns last year because he was used in the red zone. But the question is, with the influx situation that is going to be the Rams this year, are those opportunities in the red zone going to consistently be there? You can't say that they're going to be. So with that already a question mark, that puts him down to the 4th round value. Then you have to ask yourself, okay, well, Kyren here, if I could get a little bit more for Kyren by trading him, and I'm in a dynasty league, by all means, do that because he does have still value. But there is that impending idea that Blake Corum is going to come in. Blake was productive in college. He's going to come in, and he might be a different type of runner than Kyren and be more successful. So Kyren is fully a guy that can be faded. However, if I'm taking him in the 4th round of best ball leagues, I think that the value is fine there. But in terms of dynasty production, I think that I would be fading Kyren and moving on from Kyren, even knowing that he can be productive, Yeah, Corum is pretty scary. Joe did say he's taking a quarterback with this pick, and I'm really curious who the quarterback's going to be. Deadly curious, actually.
It's a rookie. It's the rookie I think is going to go 3rd in the draft of the quarterbacks. He's going to jump ahead of Dart. He's going to jump ahead of Milroe.
I really don't like walking into the season with Anthony Richardson as a quarterback.
Well, it ain't going to be him either.
Well, I know because we already have him on the team. Joe's really scaring me. Balls of steel.
That's right.
Joe is not faded. You can see he took his boy Giddens, he took his boy Tootin, took his boy Sinnott. I mean, this is classic Joe. This is back end victory, baby. Right here.
How you win dynasty leagues, or just how you win best ball leagues.
I mean, it's true. I mean, last year when we were doing DraftKings best ball drafts, we were taking a lot of Bo Nix late. We were taking a lot of JJ McCarthy late. Some of these players panned out.
We did a lot of Wandale stacks.
We did a lot of Wandale, Daniel Jones.
And again, there's a reason they're in the 15th round. The fact we got 4 amazing weeks out of them was a home run.
Wandale and DraftKings paid off.
He did.
And Underdog, not so much. Yeah, I would clean house. Family, if I were you, I'd be looking to package probably Kyren and Ramondre. See what the pick total is that I could probably get, and see what players that I could probably get back. If you're trading away Kyren, because people are going to have the same conversation for themselves. Kyren and Ramondre for some picks And maybe you want to get into, I don't know, that's tough. Maybe you would want to get into or try to move yourself into, I don't know. I don't know if Monty would be worth it. Chase Brown, no. Maybe you could have a conversation with the people that own Brooks and Chuba. Maybe you like that situation a little bit more. There's just a lot of situations right now in the NFL in terms of the running back market that are in flux. If you like the potentiality of Kenneth Walker, the fuck?
Tyler Shook, University of Louisville.
Tyler, I'm shook right now. I see Kirk Cousins. I thought you picked Aaron Rodgers for a minute. I was
Hell
seeing the
no.
screen.
I'm thinking Rodgers.
I was like, are you crazy? Tyler Shook. All right, talk to us.
All right, so first off, much better decision maker than Dart, actually does go through a read progression. Fairly accurate. I would say more accurate than Shador. I think he's going to skyrocket once we see going up through the combine process. I think he might be the most in loved player throughout it in terms of jumping up boards. I really think you're going to be in a good spot with it.
So
I think he goes ahead of Milroe. What holds him back is he's a pocket guy. He's not a runner.
Okay.
But he might be the most accurate one of all of them. Accuracy still sells in this league.
All right, let's review this team. And I'm just curious because I just pulled up his name. Being honest with you, last Louisville quarterback, being Lamar. I'm looking at.
He's not Lamar.
What I know, but I just pulled up his name, and I'm just going to read you a couple of the headings of articles that have come.
Go for
it. It's actually good. Okay. Will Tom Brady lead the Las Vegas Raiders to Tyler Shook in the 2025 NFL Draft?
Yeah, it'd be about the 36th pick.
Tyler Shook was worth NFL hype before he got it. Former Oregon quarterback, this one comes from Sports Illustrated 6 days ago. Former Oregon quarterback Tyler Shook, biggest NFL draft riser ahead of Combine. Athlon Sports 2 days ago. 2025 NFL Combine. Could Louisville QB Tyler Shook be the star of the event? TWSN Sports. Tyler Shook, this year's Michael Penix Jr. So, again.
Got to be ahead of it a little bit, Bob.
Five best landing spots. Arm strength galore. Got a nice beard. Good haircut.
He's got accuracy is what he's got.
So, here's the 5 potential landing spots of Shook.
Well, there's 6 teams without a quarterback. It's all them.
You've got Rams, Jets, Colts, Steelers, Saints.
Rams obviously being the best spot.
So it would be a curiosity that if Stafford were to go, if you pair up a guy that has spectacular arm strength as Shook with a guy like Nakua, he could be a guy.
A guy like McVay.
He ain't got a starting job yet. But Aaron Rodgers doesn't. Kirk Cousins doesn't either. So if I'm taking,
you're talking about last round dart throws, man. I like it. Sorry, here's the roster, guys.
I'll tell you this. I haven't seen anybody draft him. So I mean, there is that potentiality.
His ADP is 239.9. That's as not drafted as you can
get.
So
let's go through the.
So here it is. It's Richardson, McCarthy, Shook. Running backs, obviously a much stronger group. Bucky, Hampton, who will go in the first round, if not like 3 minutes into the second. Najee, who will be a starter somewhere. Gordon, I am big on. Giddens, I like Giddens' game too. I think he's gonna get touches. And Tootin is another guy who I think is gonna fly up boards because he looks like Saquon. He's not Saquon, but he looks like him. He's super fast, and dude, he's gonna fly up some stuff. The receivers are all proven. J.J.F. Garrett Wilson, Flowers, Godwin, Parasol, Mims. You throw in Trey Harris and Adonai Mitchell, so we make sure we got our third Colt with Tyler Warren, and then you got Gesicki and Stennett. We might have actually a pretty decent Indianapolis stack there, Bob. We weren't going for it, but we got three. We got two Colts for sure, and probably Warren.
I mean, they're family. I agree with you to most of the extent. You know, there is a dynamic that if you take a tight end, running back, wide receiver in the last round, that there's a good chance that they will play snaps on the field or sneak in for a touchdown somewhere along the line.
I get you.
But again, you know, for the audience, Joe throwing out one of his sleepers there in the last round, 20th overall. Right. I think that when you go after it and you look at quarterbacks, again, you know, you look back at last year and you could see guys like Nix and McCarthy prior to the injury going somewhere in that, what was it, like 16th round?
That's right.
Somewhere in the 16th, 18th round.
Basically, where Dart went today. So let me bring the draft.
Nobody was drafting Flacco last year for the most part, unless it was super flex. Nobody was taking a chance on a guy like Winston. They ended up coming in. You know, sometimes the pathway to quarterback can be a little bit easier if everything in front of them is in flux. I mean, you saw Bryce Young this past year. If you took Bryce Young this past year, Bryce Young was taken out of the game, you know, when he was injured, put back in, obviously. But, you know, we had conversations about Andy Dalton again. And that's not really a conversation I want to have. But again, Andy Dalton.
Hey, they re-signed him, though.
A pathway to playing time. So, I mean, like, granted, if you are banking on a guy like, say, Tua to get hurt, a dart throw and a quarterback once or twice, you know, but again, usually what happens with quarterbacks is that the starter will come back in. So predicating that, you know, this last pick, Tyler Shook, I think it's just interesting. I think it's an interesting experiment to see the quarterbacks. I would rather, like I said, I'd rather take these last round quarterbacks, Aaron Rodgers, Shook, Milra, or Joe Milton, and Cousins. You know, Joe Milton is an interesting one as well. Doesn't have a pathway necessarily to playing. If he does come in and plays, you know, he was.
Basically, here's my answer. I don't think that the fifth quarterback on, this is the family's point as well, has any chance of getting any snaps this year. So if once Dart's off the board, pretty sure Milroe was already gone. You have to take a dart throw to get into who could be one of the first four quarterbacks drafted. Unfortunately, Shador's going to be one of them, who's not a winner. So
not a winner.
He's not. I mean, the home run is if Shook goes all the way and takes Shador's spot, which I'm not saying that's out of the realm of possibility. He's not a runner.
That would be a home run. That would be a home run. But again, experimentation for the people, so you don't lock yourself into certain situations that you might not want to be in.
And don't get me wrong, this was a dirty bailout pick. I mean, we got screwed out of quarterbacks twice in this draft.
We didn't. Okay, go back up to the quarterbacks, though, because we didn't necessarily.
I thoroughly expected Baker to fall to us right here.
And it's okay. It's okay that he didn't, but also stealing the nerves a little bit, because once you see, go to the 10th round there.
Where the 10th round got crazy,
yeah. For those of you watching right now, this is going to be kind of where the bread and butter of the quarterbacks are going to go. And it's been changing on a weekly basis, almost daily. But this is the set. This is normally what, to some degree, minus the run, but even including the run to some degree as well, that this round is where the majority of these best ball quarterbacks are going to go.
Yeah, and 10, 11, 12. They normally get spread out a little bit more than happened today.
Knowing that knowing that we were talking about exposures in this episode and talking about players to be underexposed, overexposed, it is the fact that exposure is a myth just as it exists by itself, and you want diversification for the purpose of diversification isn't always great unless you are pivoting to 150 lineups or whatnot. There's a lot of
then I don't agree with
there's
it.
a lot more conversation.
Believe in your guys, go win.
But the point I want to say is what you would want to do when you're walking in these drafts is to kind of pinpoint, like we did last week, a couple of quarterbacks that you're okay with, okay? That you believe that this set of quarterbacks will be able to realistically have chances to put up 20, 25 plus points games in a given week for a set period of time. So looking at the belief system that you need to have in place for these quarterbacks, you would have to assume Justin Herbert, if Justin Herbert is worth your time in the 10th round and you don't want to be forced into taking him, if Justin Herbert's your guy, then you believe then that Ladd, quick QJ, maybe another wide receiver is going to be coming in, and he's going to be going back up to the 30-plus kind of quarterback that he's going to be.
Yeah, we got 13 minutes. Can I break down QJ for a minute?
Not yet. Yet. Let me just stick with the quarterbacks for a moment.
Yeah.
Going then and saying...
I never want to hear something like that again, family. That was very disgraceful.
Then going in and saying, okay, well, Jordan Love, where's and doing that experiment with each one of these quarterbacks and saying to yourself, what could I live with? What kind of production can I live with? And for us,
so, looking at this board, I think I'm falling back, assuming he plays with Tua. I mean, the fact you can get him into 10th, and this goes to an episode we did last week. Miami and Cincinnati both are losing their defenses. Miami Dolphins are losing 3 starting members of their secondary and cannot afford to bring anyone back. They have to go all in on offense. They already don't believe that they should be running the ball, even though when they were at their best, they were great at running the ball. Tua has shown that when they run, he can still lead the league in passing yardage. You can get him in the 12th round. Like, to me, it's a home run. The reason we didn't go with Tua today because we're going unstacked. You should go a runner that's unstacked, hence Richardson. But I would not be opposed, Bob.
Yeah,
you don't like Waddle, but I do.
Dramatically. I'm not. Yeah, again, a guy like Tua, where Tua's at, Tua does have the potential and the skill set of players.
I think he outscores everyone in the 11th round. Which is Penix, Lawrence, Ward, and May.
I disagree with you on Penix, but I do think that Tua is more so. The problem with him is, will he stay on the field? And a lot of people in most of these drafts don't want to take 3 quarterbacks. So assuming the risk of 2, when you assume
you say that, but almost everyone, the only one who didn't was number 12. Everyone else took 3.
Right, but when you assume the risk of Tua, I do think that there is some implications that, like I said earlier, if you believe that he's going to play the full season, then he absolutely can be a top 10, top 5 quarterback in a given week. He was a top 5 quarterback twice this year. So when
even if he does it, he was twice out of 10 games. That's 20%. If you give me someone who's going to be in my starting lineup 20% of the time in the 12th round, that's a win any position in best ball league.
That's what I was saying. I agree with you to this point.
Yeah.
But I do agree with family to this point too, that once Baker went off the board, Joe got a little cray-cray. But
McCarthy, again, I believe in McCarthy. I want to put that out there. I think McCarthy is going to have a hell of a year.
That's hilarious.
I really do. Shook we would never have taken Shook, obviously.
It's like he's driving with a bottle of wine. He's got the mouse, bottle of wine. It's becoming Lent, bottle of wine happening there.
It's about to happen, dude. It's about to happen.
But to that point, there's a lot. Although it feels crazy, it was definitely impacted by the quarterbacks. Had we gotten Baker, we wouldn't go Shook in the last round like that. But
no, I would have gotten another rookie running back.
Even looking at the potential for this team, where if you believe it in the rookies as they are, right, and they can be productive, then the only inherent weakness built around in this team necessarily would be the quarterback position. And by taking 3 quarterbacks, you're kind of mitigating that risk. But the problem is these 3 quarterbacks probably will throw up sub 10 more than they'll throw up plus 15.
See,
I don't believe
this is a disagreement about coaching as a starting point.
I believe in Anthony Richardson.
I believe in O'Connell. First off, O'Connell got more out of Darnold than anyone ever has. He got more out of Cousins than anyone ever has.
Oh no, I believe.
I think that McCarthy is going to be one of the. He could be the ladder this year, Bob. He might be the guy that I am so on who's being undervalued because people have forgotten about him. First off, if McCarthy was in this draft, he's the first pick overall, no doubt.
I don't disagree with you that McCarthy has potential. And this is the same. We might not get to QJ right now, but this goes to the same point that I'm making about a guy like Tyler Warren, okay? I'm not saying that Tyler or JJ has potential. They both have the potential to be a productive player in the NFL. But my problem is not with the player, it's with the round. So while JJ McCarthy,
but that's the cost of him. And I think he's a 5th round talent.
I don't think the cost of JJ McCarthy.
Oh, we're talking McCarthy now, not Warren.
Yeah,
okay.
I don't think the cost of where you took JJ McCarthy is worth the risk of McCarthy not playing another season.
Well, that's exactly what his ADP was. I did not reach on him at all. There's 2 players in this draft. Ironically,
I know you didn't reach on him.
I know you didn't reach on ADP, which was Richardson and McCarthy.
But that's one of the issues that I have with these early ADPs is that these ADPs are being based off of the totality of the drafting pool.
Oh, yeah.
And they're going to change every single day. But the belief system that I believe the reason why JJ is going that high is because of the Jefferson drafters. We took Jefferson 4th overall.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we would have taken him without a Viking.
The flux of JJ, the stack building that you would build with JJ and Jefferson, JJ would be, it is guiding that ADP is more so what I'm saying. I'm not saying that ADP is rising because JJ McCarthy's situation is great or that we have any way of saying that JJ McCarthy is going to have a great year, and he might. But the reason why I don't like the ADP is because I think it's being guided by the Jefferson drafter. And you said, well, this is exactly where his ADP is. And guess what? That's exactly where Jefferson's being drafted.
Well, I get it. So it makes sense.
That's what I don't like about this ADP and saying that he's the next up, because I don't think that he was the next best option for us. I would have rather had Justin Fields and waited on McCarthy, because I don't think who drafted Addison, right? I don't think that the Addison or Hawkinson drafter would have taken JJ McCarthy.
Went to number 10 in the 7th, and Addison.
I agree with this comment too, family.
Where did
his last 2 games sucked. So the Hawkinson drafter already drafted Jane Daniels. They weren't going to take J.J. McCarthy. The Addison drafter drafted Patrick Mahomes, go down a little bit more. And they also probably weren't. Yeah, and they probably weren't going to. They might have taken J.J. McCarthy. But when you invest that draft capital up like they did, they were most likely not going to take JJ. So he was a guy.
Well, I'd rather have JJ McCarthy than Braylon Allen.
But I'd have rather had Fields than JJ McCarthy, or I'd rather.
No, I get that. So, but part of that was learning that Fields is now no longer bound to the 15th round.
Yeah, I mean, there is
learning.
Yeah, there is some learning that's happening there, which is great. But the point I wanted to make too about Tyler Warren, nice. Yeah, I mean that's solid. If you traded Darnold away for the 110, I love that a lot.
Sure now, do.
I want to say this about tight end in general, and this is just what kept me off this point right here. Love that. I want to see how far Tyler Warren goes.
And we've done that experiment before, and I didn't like what my team looked like.
But anyway, back to the point that I wanted to make about Tyler Warren is that he is a great player. He has all of the attributes that you want from a tight end. He's capable of blocking. He's capable as a pass catcher, capable as a target, all of the good stuff. And I see your point, Joe, when you look at the 8th round and you say to yourself, I don't see another player that I would have wanted in the 8th round. But more so, This is more so to me. This is not about any one singular player. This is about a position. So looking at where you took Tyler Warren, and I get you don't like the running backs there. So taking the running backs off the table, right?
I don't think I like the receivers there either.
You're looking at
based upon everyone who went after Warren. So obviously, I'm not taking Ramondre, Scatterbo, or Swift.
Yeah,
I consider Najee, although it's been a super read.
Scatterbo has climbed too high.
Scatterbo has climbed way too high. Scatterbo would not be a good NFL player.
Way too high.
I think Brian Robinson is going to get rookied out, and I think he's going to have a tough thing. Although it sucks for him, but I think that's the reality. But unless you're looking at a quarterback, like I don't want Darnell Mooney.
I don't mind him. Again.
I'm willing to bet that Tyler Warren gives you more fantasy points than Mooney.
I see your point.
So my point is
your point.
We're getting to a certain point where if I'm not going to get something better, why am I not taking him? That's my fundamental argument.
I'm there with you. I understand that your feeling of Tyler Warren being the best player on the board in that round and for the next 2 rounds potentially is.
And I think he's infinitely better than every tight end after him. I think he's better than some of the tight ends before him.
It makes sense. But what I want to say to you about this is that there's a line, and I get Tyler Warren's value, and I get that you want to have him. He's one of your players that you want to be overexposed on, which is fine. And if Baker would have been there, you would have waited until Tyler Warren fell into the 9th round to take him if he was available to you there.
And I wouldn't have Najee on this team. That wouldn't be the end of the world. No, great. I might not have gotten Warren. Had Warren gone to one of those other picks, because he's certainly better than Scatterbo, I would never have gotten there.
Right. But I love your
family. The entire point of this episode is diversifying your portfolio is stupid.
But again,
for the sake of doing it, you believe in the players who are the best. You take them.
That's Joe's belief, and I see where you're going with this, but I'm more so saying that for me, personally speaking, I don't. After seeing what we've experienced over the last 5 years of fantasy football, I understand the value that I could potentially lose out on by not taking a tight end in the top 8, top 9, top 10 rounds. But for me, and other viewers will have a different way of looking at this, I am not there. I just don't feel and family, maybe you agree with me on this as well. Anybody else who's watching, maybe you agree as well, that I just don't value taking a tight end that early if I'm also going to be taking multiple tight ends a little bit later. If I'm taking
I'm taking
Tyler,
the tight ends at the end, dude. They're all in the back 5 rounds.
if I'm taking Tyler Warren, and like Joe believes, I want to believe that he would be the next Brock Bowers, the next Travis Kelce. And if that's the case, maybe we think about Joe taking only 2 tight ends and getting a little bit of other exposure in the other market. If you believe
I'm all for taking more rookie running backs.
My point that I'm trying to make is that this whole episode's about exposure, diversification, and non-diversification for certain players. If you believe in him so much that you are willing to take him in the 8th round,
dude, I'm willing to take him in the 5th round if I need to.
The Gesicki's, the Hunter Henrys, then they're not going to be as much use to you if you believe that he's going to be productive as you believe that he's going to be.
Yeah, but I didn't take Gesicki until the 15th round.
I understand that, but I'm just trying to communicate that point.
At some point, the guy's going to take a bye.
Where, there's a lot. Exactly. We controlled the draft in most of them. This one controlled us.
And again, the Baker pick has a lot to do with it. The fact we didn't get Baker. But again, I love our running back room. If like I said,
I would even say, actually, family, I would even say that the Tyler Warren
receiver room in this draft,
the Tyler Warren pick, and the Najee pick was not the scramble.
No, that wasn't scrambling at all.
Where we actually went with a slight probably hiccup.
It's probably Trey Harris. We probably should have started the quarterbacks there.
Would be Mims.
Oh, I don't think Mims is a problem.
Mims, not taking Mims would have maybe opened the door for Herbert. Again, I don't believe in Herbert as much. But Trey Harris as the other wide receiver here, knowing what our figures were.
Our big board was already established. Had we taken Trey Hendricks off it, we would have just taken Richardson a pick earlier, McCarthy a pick earlier, then we would have gotten
I agree with this family. And to the point that I was making to you earlier, and family put it in the chat too, that the reason for the backfill of tight ends was because we weren't taking a tight end with a priority pick. You
still need to have 3.
I get it, but I am under the inclination that if you are going to continue to take or wanting to take in certain drafts Tyler Warren in the 8th round, that
all right. So let's look at the last 5 rounds.
The way the investment of picks should be just slightly different.
No, all right. Well, all right. So because I took Gesicki with 5 to go in round 16,
precisely.
Who did I miss out on that I should have drafted? I have no interest in Kendre Miller, Estain, Justin.
No.
It would be playing rookie roulette at running back anyway.
No, again, this isn't saying. Again, I'm not saying that Tyler Warren is a bad player. I'm not saying that he doesn't have value. All I'm communicating, and I believe family is communicating the same point, is that there is a sense of redundancy within the strategy in that I am, and it goes to the point that I was making earlier about the positions, not the player in that middle and that 8th, 9th round, is that if you're spending a high priority pick in Tyler Warren, and logistically speaking, you want Warren to be the number 1 guy, right? Every week, then the backfill of the tight ends 2 to 3, it doesn't matter.
Well, I know it doesn't
matter.
But Bob, I basically look at it as those last 4 picks, with the exception of Tyler, they were the guys I exactly wanted in my backfield. They were on my board nearly from the beginning.
But okay, let me rephrase.
But my question is, looking at the board, who did I miss out on that would have been an improvement?
It's not about missing out on a particular player. It's the positional quantities, the positional advantage. So at the point that you're taking Tyler Warren, okay, go up. I'm not saying Tyler Warren is going to be a bad player, so don't.
No, I'm trying to understand your positional value standpoint because we took twisted. 3 of them.
So looking at Tyler Warren is the 6th tight end off the board, 5th tight end off the board.
Oh, I think he was 7th. All right, so McBride, Bowers, Laporta, Kittle, Hawk, Andrews, so 8th.
Okay, so again, you're taking him in the top 8 tight ends, assuming the risk and assuming that he's going to produce tight end 1 numbers all year, which is fine.
Mm-hmm.
If we take out Tyler Warren,
we couldn't have gotten Baker.
No,
he went to pick before us.
He knows. Yeah, he knows. If we were to take Baker there, of course, we would have taken Baker there.
Yeah, Baker would have been the pick. He was slated in.
But the necessity of Tyler Warren, if we believe that he has that value, I think what we just need to have a conversation about is understanding that if this 8th, 9th round is going to be the round that you want to continue taking Tyler Warren because you are okay being overexposed to him,
absolutely,
and that's what you want to do, then we need to rethink the usage of the later picks, because the belief system that we talked about last week is that if I believe X player is going to be great, then I don't need to parse it as much with Y and Z player. We need to take one.
I get that, but to the same point, you should make the argument, well, then why are you drafting a receiver after your 4th one? Because that's what you do.
Well,
I don't know how much longer you want me to wait on tight end than the 16th round.
Listen. I'm not saying you have to listen on the tight end.
Okay? I'm trying to say, are you trying to say just I should wait till 19 and 20 for the last 2 tight ends? Because quite frankly, I don't really see the difference between 16 and 19.
I'm saying this is that building Warren and building multiple late tight ends is redundant, because you
need to have 3 because you need to have 3 of every position.
That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. Okay. The point I'm trying to make is there's a level of redundancy, because Tyler Warren is a guy we have not seen play football yet. Okay?
Yeah.
And we want him to start for us every week.
And he probably will.
That's the goal.
Especially now that, of course, actually, the one I should be dropping is Gesicki, now that Higgins is back there. That was more of an instinctual pick.
Yes. And replacing Gesicki with a Derek Carr, who is probably still going to have a job next year, or replacing him with another, taking and understanding that if I'm taking Tyler Warren 8th overall and I'm not taking Gesicki.
Dude, part of this is I wanted to be on the record about Shook. I want to be on the record with him before he blows up that he is a dude.
But what I'm saying is there's a level of redundancy to the point where if you're taking Tyler Warren in the 8th, and we took Trey Harris in the 13th round, something like that.
Yeah.
Is that maybe pushing back Trey Harris, taking the quarterback there, and then taking a guy like Jalen Royal in the 16th round?
Yeah. I think in general we should just avoid the rookie receivers, aside from maybe 2.
And this point is also one to consider as well. If we are going to go in on Tyler Warren and we think that Tyler Warren is going to be successful, we can also start taking rookies a little bit later on in that draft pool. Because look, Joe, if you go into that round, that 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 round, this is a good conversation to have, because neither family or I are saying that Tyler Warren is not going to be a good player. But let's take a look then.
Bro, let me ask you this. what if I would have gone Warren and then instead of Najee, Jonnu Smith and not touched another tight end at all and just gone with those two? Is that what you want?
That's
right.
what I'm talking about. That reduces.
I will stack those two. Jonnu Smith is probably my third favorite tight end for value right now.
That reduces the redundancy. And again, family suggested Hawk. Hawk was already off the board.
Yeah, I don't want to go more expensive than Warren.
But if you knew you were building J.J. McCarthy, Hawk, where we took Pearsall, plus Tyler Warren, wouldn't have been a bad call either. Then you avoid everything else.
Part of this was getting too much side conversation in the beginning of the draft. So that's what Wednesday will be. Wednesday will be a hard focus on stacks. And since we don't know where our draft pick's going to be because of the randomness of Underdog.
I don't really like Kincaid, but I see the point here. Goddard, another one.
See, I don't like Goddard.
Potentiality there.
The biggest problem we have with this is the problem we always talk about tight ends. There's only 4 worth having. The rest, at price.
The rest are a veritable hodgepodge of who's who and who's going to produce in a given week.
And I can even talk myself out of Jonnu Smith.
I can too.
So,
I can absolutely talk myself out of Jonnu, depending on how the usage happens, and that's the whole point of us doing the backfill tight end strategy when we had it. But now where you're taking Tyler Warren, so we're the back.
So you basically want to end in an ideal draft, only 2 quarterbacks, only 2 tight ends, rest being receivers.
No, not necessarily. Not all the time. It depends on the player. That depends on that aspect. The quarterback aspect does depend on the quarterback.
Well, yeah, in that scenario, you had a stud. So we'll just say you got Hurts. Then when you have Hurts or something like that, you should only have 2. I agree.
You get Baker, and then say you follow it up with
Baker and Fields is fine.
Baker and Fields, or Baker and Richardson, or Baker and Michael, whatever. That's fine too. But what I want to communicate more so to that end is that because the tight end backfill strategy was working because Tyler Warren was being drafted a little bit later. Now that Tyler Warren has climbed the board, we have to adjust our expectations of the value of the rest of the players on the board in reference to where we're positioning Tyler Warren at in our player pool.
Okay.
Right.
So that's what Wednesday will be, guys. Wednesday will be all about the stacks. So
again,
we will see you guys then.
This point right here, Joe, is a good point that family made before we go off. It's better to take someone in round 12 who may start 30% of the games for you, because we're assuming that Tyler Warren's going to start 70%. And taking the 3 that are going to be 10% with the backfill strategy that we had before. So again, learning experiences, good conversations. We're going to be back Wednesday, 3:45 Eastern.
And we're going to start fading to Secchi relative to where we were.
To talk about quarterbacks and to talk about these tight ends. Again, tight ends are always on our show. Tight ends are always the sticking point, and I absolutely love it. Good thing we're not drafting kickers in best ball.
Oh, my
God.
God.
Good thing we're not drafting kickers in best ball. But we'll be back 3:45 Eastern. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. Like, follow, subscribe if you get the chance. We'll see you back on Wednesday, 3:45 Eastern.
Welcome to Local Football Flavor, connecting the fan bases of the NFL.